Welcome to Live at the Hive, digital marketing from the trenches, or just Live at the Hive, I guess. I'm Dan Nedelko. You may remember that we did have a podcast running for about 4 years. I think we did it straight every week. We did it live. We took a step back. We refreshed some of the content. And now we're just Live at the Hive. And we've got Joe DellaVecchia.
Hello.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Dan. Pleasure to be here. Longtime admirer of the show, first-time guest, co-host, however you want to phrase it.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Is that how that goes?
Exactly. Back in those radio days, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yeah, totally. So, Joe, you've obviously been with us for going on a couple of years now at the
2 years, yeah,
at the Hive, and so for any of our live and podcast listeners, Joe may be a somewhat new face, although you're all over social and everything too.
I am. At Who Killed the Peacemaker, shameless plug.
Yes, there you go. And even on our honeypot socials, which are in process of being revived as well. I think one of the things with Live at the Hive was, we had done it so often and for so many years, we weren't running out of topics, but I feel like it's always time to, take a bit of a step back, take a bit of a break, recharge, and then kind of come at it from a different angle, right?
You never want to get dry or stale with listeners.
No, you don't. And especially as, when you're creating content like that, especially long form content, I feel like it is easy to get into a pattern, which then feels like a bit of a rut, if you're the one.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. As you know, Dan, I do some podcasting myself in my free time, and that's one of the things we've noticed too. We talk a lot about movies in the entertainment industry, and we often find ourselves always coming back to the streaming problem, the streaming versus cable problem. And it's just because it's so relevant, but at the same time, it's like, how many times can you talk about this?
Exactly. And, given that, I think it's been a couple of years, it's amazing. We still get a few thousand podcast listens per month, kind of making the case for evergreen content and putting it out there, right? But for something like local business and local business searches, which is kind of our topic today, I think the world has changed entirely in 18 to 24 months, right?
I think you can say that for marketing in general. It's changing every quarter, honestly. It's always changing. And even when we think we know something, it kind of gets turned on its head. Everyone's still trying to figure out what the TikTok algorithm is. And even though we have a bit of a better understanding of it now than we did back at 2020 at TikTok's original height, still, if we were to actually see the guts and the code there, I bet we would still be taken aback.
Oh yeah. And I mean, if we're talking a little bit about that, it was just TikTok. Well, now there's Reels and YouTube Shorts, and that market has fractured. The point to which, I think each one of those platforms is falling into a certain type of a bit of a niche, right?
They are, yeah. They're similar but different at the same time, and they all have different indicators of what works. And I've noticed too, there's a lot more. I really like YouTube Shorts. A lot of people do not like YouTube Shorts. I get from conversations, but I really enjoy YouTube Shorts. And I get a few creators that I get both their same content on YouTube, and I'll get it on TikTok as well. And I'll just notice how vastly different the engagement is, and the comments and the shares and everything. And it's really interesting to see and compare those numbers just kind of in real time, how well something does on TikTok. For example, I find on TikTok, something that's immediate and grabs your hook and your attention does really, really well. But something that builds off of your longer form content does much better on YouTube Shorts.
Oh, yeah. It's a feeder for the long form content, that algorithm for sure. And, Instagram Reels is great for local businesses and personalized recommendations. In a sense, kind of a more personalized version in a way. And TikTok just has kind of the broad organic reach where you can go viral, but your audience is going to be potentially worldwide, at least North American wide, right? So anyhow, that's an interesting rabbit hole. We might go back and cut that one back and put the main topic. But the main topic of today is Google Business Profiles, and in particular, kind of one of the interesting things that I like to look at is some of the patterns and the changes in the way people search this. And just to kick it off as to why businesses really need to think about Google Business Profiles, just throwing out some stats. 96% of all consumers have conducted a local search in the last 30 days, it's a pretty astonishing number, right? That's a lot. 53.
I think I did one in the last 30 minutes. Like it's
yeah, exactly. You don't really need to go to a big stats kind of house to think to see how it works when our own behavior is really kind of mimicking that, right? And I think one of the big things that, with this refreshed version of Live at the Hive is not just digital marketing, but how is digital marketing affecting a business? Like, how can a business take advantage of this, and why do they need to? And like, what does it mean for the consumer? Because at the end of the day, we can go deep into tactics. Like, that's an endless rabbit hole of how we get to do something. But at the end of the day, what we want to do is you've got a business on one side and you've got consumers on the other, and you're trying to match them up with relevant businesses and services so that those leads come in and they're qualified and of value kind of on both sides of that equation, right? And so today we're talking about Google Business Profiles and why they're so powerful, and even in the last 24 months, how that's changed and what's changed on the consumer side and what they see from that. So, I guess it all starts with, what is Google Business Profile, and, where did that change, right?
It was called Google My Business originally for people that might be more familiar with that term.
It's a better name. It's a way better name.
It is a such better name.
I can't believe that somebody at Google thought it would be better to get rid of Google My Business versus Google Business Profile, but there's got to be some method to the madness, right? Yeah, and I mean this is really a natural progression from the old Yellow Pages. Going back way back when you used to get AAA painting, and they would be the first ones in the telephone book. So you had AAA and quadruple A, and you'd have to pay. I can't remember what it was. It was expensive even back then to put a Yellow Pages, but the modern form of the Yellow Pages, right?
Well, especially if you think about it too from a behavior standpoint, the Yellow Pages was the easiest place to go. Like I grew up in the early 2000s mostly, and you could go in there, you need information on a business, you just flip, you find the service provider nearest to you. You got from that little rectangular adder, if they had the bigger square one, you got their address, their contact information, and usually more. Sometimes they would put a quote on there, sort of like a review. You get a nice picture. All of that was there, and it was nice and very easily obtainable, so you could get that information, and you still have access to that. And I think the most convenient part about Google Business Profile is that it's the same thing, except there's more to it, and it's in your pocket now. You don't have to. You could never carry that large yellow book around. You would need a whole like baby Bjorn strap to do that. But now I can just reach into my pocket. I can pull up my mobile device, and I can get all the information I need.
Well, yeah, and I think it's interesting because just looking at doing a quick flip over here onto that's my mobile phone. It really is the Yellow Pages on steroids, right? And I think, like I said, I think an important thing for business owners to understand, and this is where agencies come in, is like, well, why would I need an agency to do this, right? You don't really. It's all a time versus input versus output kind of mechanism. How fast is it going to take you to do something that you don't really know how to do, right? But at the end of the day, the important thing for businesses to understand is that these are what consumers are, like this is how consumers are consuming and finding businesses. And so regardless of your personal opinion on what Google may or may not be, or TikTok may or may not be, the reality is that this is where consumers are, and this is how consumers are using this technology on a daily basis, and that makes it a real game changer. That's when it becomes interesting, right? It's like having one fax machine back in the day was like no big deal. Who cares, right? You needed billions of them.
To just echo like those thoughts too, like I know a lot of, especially when it comes to small business, like if you're a small business, Google Business Profile is such a game changer for you. It can do so much. I know we're going to talk a bit more about that in a moment. But I know that when it comes, especially when it's like Google Ads, like if you're someone who doesn't really understand technology or how that stuff works, it can be super intimidating to not know what you're doing. Google Business Profile does make it accessible, They do have a lot of forums also on Google support to help you, but it has a nice little checklist setup wizard when you are going through it. It does walk you through it nicely. Now, of course, you can get more in depth. You can, like we were saying, you can get an agency involved. You can get people to help you with it where you can take it to that next level above and beyond. But that entry point that everyone should have and everyone should be utilizing and not enough people are is actually really, really accessible.
Yeah, totally. And, let's be clear. Google Business Profile is a product that Google has created with a whole interface. And it's something that's really easy to set up. It's really easy to get listed on Google. And in fact, even if you don't have a Google Business Profile, Google's probably created one for your business anyways, and you just don't know about it, or you're not aware of it, or whatever that might be. And so this really becomes kind of the simplest, and I've always said this, it's in fact probably the easiest thing for any business owner at the bare minimum to verify their business, to get into this and start to fill out some of the basic information. That alone, right? Just doing that alone is going to make a whole world of difference. And I think one of the things to talk about a little bit here is less about the technical side, and we'll kind of touch on that, and I think we'll get into it. But I think one of the interesting things, at least from where I'm sitting, is, how do people use this, right? Like, as an end user, what am I looking at? Because I think that gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. People are like, I got a Google Business Profile. But if you don't really connect those 2 points, what you're doing on one side, which is setting up all your information. So here's a search, right? That's a pretty simple search. Just dentist near me. And you can see here that in the results, I've got some sponsored listings here. But if I go here and I see Country Dental, they've got 762 reviews. Preston Family Dental and Townline Dentistry, 357. If I click on any one of these here, this is the part that makes this super powerful and super interesting, is because if I'm looking for a dentist near me and I just say, okay, well, Country Dental looks interesting, I've got the ability to call. And yes, I have a lot of phone apps, but I can make a phone call directly from my phone. And I'm going to have to just jump back now.
You've got directions, you can share stuff, you've got a link to the website, you've got everything. It's right there at your fingertips.
Yeah. It's an incredibly powerful way to really get into, and then, with direct website clicks, and they'll go to your website. Hopefully you have one in 2024. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at this interface is what makes this so powerful. Not to mention that you see here service areas, hours of operation, all of the different services. This is a modern day Yellow Pages entry point.
You can get directions, you can share the profile directly, you can click to a website, you can see reviews and testimonials that other people are leaving. The possibilities, while not endless, seem endless because there's just so much you can do and so much information you can easily get, which has kind of been Google's whole thing since the beginning, if you really think about it, is to get all that information right at your fingertips. Now you've got that for a business.
Exactly, and if I'm imitating what a user is doing here, what you can see are all of the services and everything. Oops, that's a shameless plug. Don't worry about that.
Dan Nedelko here, he's a cool guy.
Some may agree, some may disagree. You never know. But as a business owner, now this is Honeypot Marketing here. You can see, I can see all of the business profile interactions that I've had. So as a business owner, this is where you get that one-to-one cause and effect, right? Like, is my marketing working? The famous quote. I know half of my advertising and marketing dollars are working. I just don't know which half, right? But you can see the overview of all business profile interactions. You can see the number of calls that were made. That's that link click. You can enable messaging. If you take bookings, you can enable bookings. And you've got all sorts of stats that you can work towards here. And use website clicks. You can see directly how many people are interacting with that profile. And that's really invaluable. When you're looking at where should I focus my my efforts, and are things actually paying?
I think what also is really important too, like we were saying earlier, not everyone has a business profile. Not everyone has one set up. So if you think about it now here, like let's say you've got Dan's Plumbing Service, and Dan's Plumbing is in the middle of GTA Toronto. Lots of plumbers around there, lots of competition. If Dan's Plumbing is just taking out a bus ad, yeah, Joe on the street might notice Dan's Plumbing, but if I need a plumber and I search plumbers near me, which is what 99% of consumers are doing, you're searching plumbers near me. If Dan's Plumbing isn't properly listed or has a Google business profile that Google's made but they haven't claimed, there's no reviews there, there's no photos, there's no updates if you're having some sort of sale. But I can see over here at Chris's Plumbing, Chris is doing all of those things. He's got 5 people talking about how great his service is. They've got people posting the work he's done. He's posting the work he's doing. I'm going to go with Chris because, hey, Dan looked like a nice guy from the back of that bus ad, but I have real people here telling me what kind of work is being done and what problems can be solved.
Yeah, for sure. And, you're out-of-home advertising, and I think the important thing to reinforce for businesses is that type of advertising is still incredibly important and incredibly
very valuable.
Yeah. You want to do an omni-channel approach, maybe bus ads or bus benches or your local newspaper, especially for local businesses, is an effective way to go. But you can pair that up. The other thing is, without a verified Google business profile, you cannot respond to reviews, right? And I think one thing that we should talk about is the power of that review and what that means. And, you can say something as a business all you want, but a lot of people, and I mean, it's the rise of Amazon, right? Google reviews. And look, Google dominates because Google dominates search, right? So, there are things like Homestars and some of these other ones, but the reality is that Google's the big player on the block. They've got the end of aisle. And you can pair these things together. Once you've got that Google business profile, your radio advertising, you can almost be assured that you're going to get a lookup on Google business profiles type searches when you do any other type of advertising, right? Or PR or local media.
It's very similar. Also, it's like the rise of e-commerce as well has been so successful. Partly, you can attribute a lot of that to reviews, and that people can leave behind reviews for sellers on marketplaces. You can leave behind reviews for products on marketplaces as well, or on store fronts too. And that allows you to know nobody wants to go and spend $30 on shipping on a $50 item and paying $80 in total only just to get screwed in the end or not get something of good quality. It's the exact same thing where if I'm looking for someone for a good service, or I'm taking my family out, we're going out for dinner, I want to make sure that I'm getting my money's worth. And the best way is other people just like you sharing their experiences and their own pros and cons of what's happened to them at the visits to those restaurants or to those businesses, those contractors they've hired. And that's what just makes it so powerful and elevates it above the Yellow Pages, to bring it back to our first point right there, where the Yellow Pages had so much. Google Business Profile has more, because now not only too can I see these reviews, but businesses can also interact as well. And there will be businesses out there who will take a negative review personally instead of going that customer service approach route. And that can also give you an idea of the people that you're dealing with as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, as a business owner, whether it's a painting service or HVAC or like plumbing, heating, electrical, garage doors, like any local service, accountant, lawyer, doesn't really matter. Your reviews are, there's a signal. If you have 1,000 5-star reviews and they're all 5 stars and they have no descriptions, that's also a signal for savvy consumers. And Amazon's done a lot for this. Like, let's call a spade. Amazon really got people looking at those reviews and looking at honest reviews, right? A 4.8 is not a failure, like out of 5, right? So you want to have like natural, organic reviews that are genuine. And back in the day, it would be Yelp in the world of restaurants. Yelp's still around, but I feel like Yelp is more of a niche, and the mainstream is Google reviews, and that's kind of simply the way that the market has gone.
It's also so easy too, with Google being the #1 browser. It's all built in right there. We can also talk a bit more too as well about like how like Google Business Profile has its own separate algorithm and ranking than regular Google search right there. And that's going to make a difference on how that appears in those blocks. We can also talk about too how if you have a Google Business Profile, you go and you set it up. If you just leave it versus somebody else who might be updating their Google Business Profile every other day or every week, uploading new photos, is responding to reviews, that Google Business Profile is going to get more favor in Google's organic.
Well, yeah, for sure. And I mean, if we look at this result here that's on the screen right now, what we can see is these results do not look the same as other Google results. And that's a really important thing. It's a great point that you make, and it's really important for business owners to understand that when you do a local search, Google has a different algorithm that kicks in. It looks and it behaves entirely differently than you sitting at your laptop, for instance, or at your desktop computer at work or whatever it might be. The places right here show differently. These are what's called the local map pack. You can see related searches, and then you get down to what you would call the traditional organic search. But that's at least halfway down the page at this moment on my phone, right? So it is a different display. It's an entirely different universe that businesses need to be aware of. And I think, there's some movers in terms of, who's savvier. I think dentists, for example, have picked up on this. You can see that these folks here, 762 reviews, they've gotten quite good at integrating that into a workflow and business. But a lot of businesses that could really benefit from it haven't picked up on it, either because they're just not sure what the benefit is, or there isn't a really great entry point into the technical side of how to do this.
And I think then that also comes to, not only does it not even need to be too technical, just to speak to that review point, but there are other strategies you can employ to get reviews. I feel like that's one of the biggest pain points we hear about, Dan, in our everyday lives with marketing and working with clients, is that we always hear well, I can't get reviews. Well, people don't want to leave a review, Oh, it's a lot. I got to ask my guys to ask them to leave a review. And I see you're already holding it up. You know exactly where I'm going with this. There are other ways to also get reviews and to make it easy and accessible. One of the first things we recommend is, of course, you can do an outreach campaign. Reach out to those people that are like good returning customers that are coming, and you have that on record, and just do an outreach, ask them to leave a review. If you've left a lasting impression and people are coming back again and again and again, they're going to be willing to support you in that way. That's something that we see time and time again. But the thing that Dan also held up for those watching the video version of this was a little NFC tag. And this is something absolutely huge that is a game changer and is becoming more and more popular with Google Business Profile, is NFC tags, cards, and stands being programmed to Google Business Profiles. Because like we were talking about, how if you're going to search for something, it's right there in the palm of your hand with your phone. It's also right there in the palm of your hand to leave a review. And let's face it, if we've got our phone and we can just easily tap something and then type a review, it's going to be a lot easier. Some people also just want to leave 5 stars. They'll tap, click the 5 stars, and click post. You're still getting a 5-star review right there. So having these things, the keychains are absolutely great for people in the service industry where you have workers going from site to site. They've got a truck, they've got a car. They're just taking the keychain. It's like, oh, did you really like our work? It would really mean a lot if you leave a review. You just got to tap this keychain right here. Ding, review. If you've got an office, you put it up right there with a stand. If you're a business professional going to meetings, it's exactly like bringing around a business card. You just slip the card in your wallet, you take it out, they tap the back of it. Those type of NFC cards got really popular in influencer circles right before the pandemic in the late 2010s and then also in the early 2020s a bit too, where you could just have all of your profiles right there tapped and people could easily find and follow you. It's a very similar thing. You're just tapping the back of an NFC card. And for those that might not be as tech savvy, NFC, it's Bluetooth. It's very simple. Your phone, it's nothing harmful. It's very easily to use. You can just grab it, tap it, and go.
Well, it's literally the same thing as Apple Pay,
exactly.
Google Wallet. So, I think
chip
a lot
in
of
your
these,
debit and credit card.
Yep, a lot of these things are very ubiquitous now, and really what it is in this particular case, this one is a keychain. It's programmed to go right to your Google review. So the first thing that comes up is your business name. Leave us a 5-star review, a little box for a comment. It's super simple, and nobody has to think about it. And you can use these for your service business at points when your customer is happy. right after a purchase, right after an installation, right after a repair or service. All of these things kind of work together. And, quite literally, I think this is where we get in to the shameless plug portion of the show, which is Win Local, which is our program. Now, I feel like I'm plugging myself, which looks really weird.
Dan, tell me more about Win Local, please. I've never heard of it. So please tell me more about it.
Shameless plug. Well, the reality is that there's always this conversation of like, well, why do we need an agency to do this? But you could make that argument for any service business, right? Why do I need a plumber? Well, technically you don't, unless you want to go out and buy all the equipment and do all of the learning and make sure that the job you do is the right job, all of those pitfalls.
Eventually, at some point in your life, everyone's going to need that service.
Exactly. And you could do that with plumbing, electrician. Can you do your own taxes? Sure, you can do your own taxes, but you might want to have a qualified accountant. And so what we have is we're doing a few things with Win Local. I think the most important thing, especially in like rough economic times, which is what we are in, is businesses are dismissing the power of this platform, Google Business Profiles, and what it can do and what it means. And these things draw real qualified leads. And the important thing about those real qualified leads is the difference of this with a lot of other types of marketing is that you are finding consumers in a state of a micro moment of need. I am looking for you to do something for me. My door does not work. My fuse box has blown. I've got a water leak. I need something, right? I'm being audited, whatever that might be. My back hurts. At those points, these are much more highly qualified leads. They're looking for businesses. So with Win Local, what we've got here is we're giving away for absolutely free our own setup checklist, right? Like this is literally what the team uses to ensure that when we're going through everything, we're ticking all of the boxes. That's free. If you want to do it, go nuts. Go ahead. Happy to have you do it. And we'll give you that information for absolutely free. We also have a Google Business Profile setup service, which is very low cost and very entry for businesses that might just be getting started and not be entirely sure what you're going to do with it. And then we have the Win Local subscription program where we become your marketing team every single month. And it is a bit of a shameless plug, but those are okay too, where we'll actually, and I think this is another important thing to kind of reinforce here. You can see it on a few of these here. If I go back, and if I go to Country Dental, for example, you can see a grid of images over here. And if I zoom in, so people can see, so there's content, related photos, there's videos, there's actually offers, there's all sorts of things that go into this. And Google Business Profile also has kind of very similar to call it like an Instagram or Facebook, you can post monthly posts. Those also turn up in search results. So it's an ongoing thing, and we have a subscription program. So there's kind of every tier available for every type of business. If you want to DIY and get your hands dirty, then go ahead, just hit up winlocal.org, fill out the form, and you'll be able to grab the checklist and get started yourself. If you want a little bit more help, the done-for-you model, and the ongoing support, then we've also got that. And that's the end of that shameless plug.
I think just to also build on what you were saying too, Dan, like as well, and maybe this is a shameless plug for our expertise and our insights, but one thing that we also do notice too, especially in those services and everything, like you're saying, people sometimes don't think they need it. They don't think they need it right away. Or what a lot of these businesses don't realize, I find, is that you don't have a consistent audience. And what I mean by that is you have people coming in regularly, you have regular leads coming in, you have people regularly interacting with you, but you don't have the same consistent group of people. If you're an entertainment brand or even a retail brand, you have more so the same people coming back each time. If you need something like a plumber, like a water heater, like a new window or a new door, you're not going to always be watching those people's socials. You're going to be looking at it and looking at their business profile on their website when you're shopping around and when you know you need it. The importance of Google Business Profile and keeping up to date with it is that is always revolving. You know that because you're getting new people always in, and you're not getting a lot of repeat customers if you're a service provider like that. what's really important is to make sure that you're advertising and you're in front of those people, both organically with having that business profile and having it updated, both paid, and then also it loops into with your SEO as well. You rank differently in Google Maps, you rank differently in mobile, you rank differently on desktop, you rank differently locally. And all that stuff is really important, and also things that we do cover in the Win Local program to make sure that you are prepared for all of those different facets of people finding you and making sure that your brand is easily accessible to that target area. Most people that are serving a regular target area, you can be a big business, but most likely you're a small business. And hey, honeypot to you, small businesses, we get it. We get it more than anyone. And that's why we're putting out here how important it is. Even if you don't want to do it, you want to try and bootstrap it yourself, like Dan was saying, it's so important though to still have this tool, have it set up, and be utilizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry while I die here. I think one of the important things to kind of cover, well, there's a couple of important points there, is every business starts out small. But larger organizations, maybe 20, 30 locations, 5, 10, 15, 20 locations.
You need to have a location for each area you're in.
Exactly, you do. That becomes incredibly important because one of the things that we can look at here are local search grid maps. And another very important point to talk about is it's not just the notion of who ranks first. It's who ranks first, where your customer is located, right? And relevant. So this is an example of one of the tools we have. It's called a local search grid results map. Each one of those circles is a ranking for a business within a 10-kilometer well, this one it might be actually it's smaller. This one is like a kilometer radius. And you can see that the business with the map pin in the middle is ranking differently in different locations for different other types of businesses, right? Like where those are. So it's all relative. It's very confusing. And if you are a larger organization and you have a marketing team, your marketing team is probably already busy with live events and other advertising and different types of programs you have going on. This really is a full-time job when it comes down to it. Google Business Profile has multiple location support. They can support literally, I think it's 10,000 different locations with underneath one parent location. And there's all sorts of different models. So the important part to think about, I think it's great that you said that, Joe, is like, yeah, if you've got a small one-person business, you are it's David versus Goliath. This is your David slingshot. This is the stone in your slingshot. For large organizations, you want to make sure that you're able to defend your own position. So it kind of works for everybody on the broad spectrum, right? The interesting thing is that it's much more intelligent than what you might have been used to in the past, right? Where just the bigger company has the bigger Yellow Pages ad, and that Yellow Pages ad is in Waterloo region or Niagara region or Toronto, the GTA. One last point about this that I think is really important to talk about is how does this work with your other types of marketing? So you've got Facebook and you've got TikTok and you've got Instagram and you've got YouTube and everything else. Those are very much high level, top of funnel awareness type channels. This is the lowest form of lead acquisition because you've got customers that are in a state of need or they're shopping. So they're price comparing, they're looking at reviews, they're comparing, they may reach out to you. It's easy for them to make a phone call, visit your website and get that background research because the majority of customers, by the time they place that call to you, they've already made their decision. It is a much more informed consumer we have today than we even had 5 years ago, right? And I know a number of service providers that say that sometimes customers can be annoyingly informed by things that they see and learn about on things like YouTube before they reach out. But it's an important point to make that you will have your social media, you'll have your traditional radio, print, maybe television advertising. And in the world of digital, the Google Business Profile is a very bottom of funnel function to get actual bookings and get actual customers. I've said this, I think I've done a couple of shorts on this and reels. If you had only one thing that you could do as a local service business, I would honestly ditch everything else in place of just focusing on Google Business Profile. It's the most practical thing you could be doing.
It's practical, it's relevant, and it appeases so many different boxes for educating and getting the consumer in. Because even if, that means if you ditch everything and that includes your social, Google Business Profile has a social function. You can post on it. You can post, you can link to your website, you can list your services and your products, so now it complements your website. There's so much you can do with it. So yeah, you might ditch everything for one tool, and that's a drastic example, but to base it off of your point there, we do not recommend that. But there's still so much you could do with that one tool right there, which is really, really impressive. But with all digital marketing, it should all complement each other and work together. While your brand, whether it's small in the David and Goliath situation or big and fending off, all of your marketing needs to work harmoniously and together, like your little army almost. And Google Business Profile is definitely one of the ones on the front lines.
All right. So if anybody listening ever has any questions about Google Business Profiles, local lead generation, please just reach out. There's multiple ways to get a hold of us. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're seeing this. Drop a comment.
Business Profile.
Our Google Business Profile as well. Feel free to drop a question. We'll be sure to get back to you. And listen, when it comes to the words lead generation are kind of dirty words, right? There's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen. I've even heard rumors of AI-generated leads. I have no idea what that means or how that is relevant. But I can guarantee you that it's probably not going to be effective. And I can guarantee you that it is most likely a way to take your money. Lead generation is a very real thing for businesses. It shouldn't be a dirty word, just like sales shouldn't be a dirty word. You can do it the right way and you can do it the wrong way. This is one of the right ways to do it. There are no shortcuts, just like there never has been with running, owning, and operating a small and medium-sized business. Again, regardless of whether you're a one-person show or whether you have 20 or 30 locations and multiple millions in revenue, you're still facing very similar challenges. And lead generation is important, and this is the most direct path with the largest. This is the Walmart of local business, is what this is. This is end of aisle, right? If you do it smartly, you can really, really grow your business in really substantial ways at a very, very low cost. So it's not to be dismissed. And the next time you get an email from lead generator 119745862 at yahoo.ca, please just hit that spam button.